After releasing a shitty port of FIFA 18 for the Nintendo Switch, EA is starting to get cold feet on supporting N-Dog's popular hybrid console. But is it really a good idea to stop supporting a platform that sold 8 million units in 8 months? Well, for EA's sake, I think it might actually be in their best interest to do just that. And I'll tell you why. Nintendo and EA splitting's kinda like a crappy relationship in high school where neither person even liked each other. Nintendo was just using EA to get the popular kids to like them, and EA was using Nintendo as more of a status thing, plus potential butt stuff in the bedroom. Neither party's right for each other, and they'll both be happier elsewhere. Anyway, as we all know, the version of FIFA 18 that was ported to the Switch sold rather poorly. I guess we didn't all know that, but if you didn't, then now you do. But obviously nobody's gonna buy a half-assed version of a game for the Switch or any other console, especially when most of the console's install base isn't interested in sports games in the first place. And I'm not saying there aren't Switch owners who would be interested in a good port of FIFA 18, but surely most Switch owners that'd be interested in FIFA already own a PS4 or Xbox One. And while a lot of people don't mind a slight graphical downgrade with portability being a trade-off, nobody wants to pay for the definitively worst version of any game. Besides, right now the Switch is hard to find, and most people who tracked one down did so for games like Breath of the Wild and Super Mario Odyssey. Until like 20 minutes ago, you couldn't even find a Switch without doing unspeakable favors for that weird guy behind Kmart. And most people who are interested in FIFA 18 are typically not into gaming enough to hunt down a hard-to-find console. And even less so than that when the version on the hard-to-find console is more watered down than my milk. Like I said, having a slight graphics downgrade or lower frame rate is a fair exchange for portability, but portability is not going to be enough to carry the load if you strip away most of the features in addition to a graphical downgrade. I'm not really into sports games, but out of all the reviews I've looked at, it seems unanimous that the Switch port of FIFA 18 was half-assed to the high heavens. And this isn't another case of incomplete games being released only to be finished with day one patches like most big developers like to do for some reason. FIFA 18 apparently just wasn't very good on N-Dog's hybrid console. And back to what I was saying before, on top of the fact that the game sucks noodles, Switch owners generally aren't the demographic for sports games anyway, even if the port was actually a good one. And I know the idea of having sports games on the Switch in the first place is to increase the console's universal appeal. After all, most of these sports games sell more copies every year than any Zelda game ever has, as sad as that fact is. So of course Nintendo would want a piece of that pie, but if EA or any other company for that matter isn't gonna give Nintendo competent versions of multiplats, then for everybody's sake, it's just best not to get anything at all. EA shouldn't do it, Nintendo shouldn't allow it, and obviously fans shouldn't buy it. Just look at how many shitty ports the Wii got. Because of the watered down versions of popular multiplats that console had, good third-party Wii games were completely overlooked because people either assumed it was trash or didn't want to take the chance. After all, $60 is a risky gamble. Plus the Wii wasn't even portable and people didn't like being forced to use motion controls. So back then it made sense to buy third-party games for the PS3 or 360. But the problem was that the Wii did have third-party games that nobody supported. A few bad apples ruined it for everybody, and the idea of buying a game on the Wii not made by Nintendo was sullied. So Reggie-san, if you're listening to this, and I know you are, don't make the same mistake twice. Enforce the seal of quality like you used to back in the old days. There's no reason multiplats on the Switch need to suck anyway. The graphical gap on the Switch is a lot closer to the PS4 and Xbox One than the Wii was to the PS3 and 360. There is still a gap in power, but now the Switch has portability to balance it out. And if FIFA 18 or any other game can at least be comparable to their counterparts on other consoles, then why even bother releasing a bullshit port at all? Games like Doom and Wolfenstein aren't out yet, but from everything I've seen, they look pretty damn good. And games like Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey look and play rather nicely as well. So I just don't believe that FIFA 18 being a shitty game on Nintendo's console is the Switch's fault, with the exception of the online features. The Switch does have a few kinks to work out in that department. But based on the reviews I read for FIFA 18, there's way more missing from this version than online options. Just look at the Switch version of NBA 2K18. I mean, the fact that the full game's not on the physical media requiring a massive download to the console is pretty lame. But that's a topic for another video that I've already made, which I'll link in the description. Other than the storage issues though, nobody really had any complaints for NBA 2K18 on the Switch. It was exactly what everybody expected from a Switch port. The graphics weren't as good, but the portability evened everything out and it was more or less the same game. So if 2K could do it, then why couldn't EA figure it out for FIFA 18? And if they can or don't want to figure it out, then why even bother? You can't just half-ass a game and expect people to buy it because it was made by a big company and just say, well, we tried. Sports games are more or less the same thing every year. Everybody knows this, and that's not a topic we're getting into today. But my point is that with EA coasting on the popularity of sports alone, it's not surprising that they don't want to work a little harder to make a Switch port unique or even competent. EA didn't have to make Switch games, and I'm sure Nintendo probably convinced them, but N-Dog probably assumed there'd be effort put forth. I mean, it'd be one thing if FIFA 18 was a masterpiece and still didn't sell, but again, people are used to buying these types of games on other consoles. Nobody bought a Switch Switch to play FIFA 18 on the go. So EA's market here is people who bought the Switch and also enjoy sports games. And if any of these Switch owners happen to be interested in FIFA 18, then there are people who almost certainly already own either a PS4 or Xbox One. So unless you make the Switch version something special, they're just gonna stick to buying their sports games on other consoles and play games on the Switch that make the console unique. Nintendo absolutely should want sports games and other third-party support for their console, just as long as it's good. So that's why I think EA stepping back's a good idea for everybody involved, since they don't want to make the effort for Switch games. They're not obligated to after all, and there's nothing really in it for them. EA's doing just fine on other consoles, and their games on the Switch help Nintendo way more than it helps EA. I don't think EA is a bad company, or well, I don't think this makes EA a bad company. They're just a business, and it really doesn't make sense for them to work harder to ultimately sell the same amount of copies. Switch sales for FIFA 18 aren't exactly money for EA. Those sales were just fans of the FIFA series who happened to own a Switch and were curious as to what that other version would be like. As nice as it'd be for Nintendo to have more AAA games on their platform, and while enticing EA to bring games over might be worth it, N-Dog needs to make sure there's actual effort being put in the ports, and even better if there could be exclusive content. But almost as much as EA doesn't need Nintendo, Nintendo doesn't need EA either. People want the Switch for Nintendo's first-party games above anything else. And yeah, third-party support's crucial because there's still a lot of people out there who want to play Nintendo games, but believe it or not, don't want to buy a console for that reason alone. The more third-party games there are for the Switch, then the more people there's gonna be who think, well, I want to buy Super Mario Odyssey and Breath of the Wild, but what other games could I get if I buy a Switch? Oh, alright, it'd be cool to play these in the shower, I'm sold! More third-party games on the Switch sweetens the pot for somebody to invest in buying one. But again, only if the games are good. And if EA doesn't care, then the N-Boys should move on, because for the amount of Switches EA games will actually sell, the effort could be better spent elsewhere. Besides, EA will probably be back when the Switch is in more homes. And it's gonna be a little while before the Switch is in as many casual homes as rival consoles. I do think that's inevitable, but for now, EA is just fine sticking to the PS4 and Xbone. And when they probably come back to Nintendo, hopefully they're willing to try harder. So go ahead and take a hiatus, EA. I, Cameron from the #1 YouTube channel in history, FUgameCrue, am telling you it's a good idea. Just make sure to use your whole ass for Switch ports in the future. In the meantime, I'll be playing Doom and Wolfenstein while taking a dump. What do you think though? Do you care if EA makes games for the Switch? Do you blame them for backing off indefinitely? Let me know down below and I'll pin the most entertaining comment. If you want to help this channel build some street cred, then don't forget to like and share this video. And if you're super badass and cool like I'm sure you are, then why not go ahead and subscribe while you're at it. My name's Cameron and I'll see you next time.
So I want to say thank you to your loyalty, thank you for your support.